11 o'clock on the dot on a beautiful Wednesday, I guess early afternoon. We are slowly, it's still morning, but we're getting to the afternoon. And no better way to kick off the 11 o'clock hour than with Andy Bailey, who writes for Bleacher Report and covers the NBA. Andy, thank you so much for joining us. Good to have you on the show again.
Appreciate you having me, Alan. Always a pleasure to be with you. Fun chatting hoops with you.
Let's start here, Andy. We read off your article from last week where you broke down all of the different records for the NBA teams. You had the Kings with 35 wins. Andy, I think that's probably going to be 11 or 12. That's not going to be good enough, I don't think, to make the play-in the crazy Western Conference and how things are going right now. Did you have the 35 wins? This is how we've been trying to figure things out. Did you have the 35 wins just based on a full season, nothing changes? Or is it a situation where, hey, they don't play well early, they do end up moving on from at least a DeMar DeRozan, and the second half of that season after the trade deadline might be a bit of an implosion as they're trying to figure things out? Or do you think that this current roster for 82 games, you're only seeing 35 wins?
Well, that's a good question. I think there could be a hint of that, of the forward-looking analysis that you mentioned with a team like the Kings. I think it's easier for me to look forward and foresee a tank for a team like the Nets or some other teams that we maybe anticipate doing that a little bit more confidently. But I think even if Sacramento mostly stands pat, it's going to be tough to get to 40 wins in the West. It seems like it gets better every year somehow. And occasionally there are years where the West doesn't quite live up to our expectations, and then maybe that resets the cycle a little bit. But it is perennially better than the East, and not just a little bit. Like it's the varsity conference.
Right.
And so that's one stumbling block that the Kings have to worry about. And in terms of raw talent, I don't think they quite measure up to a lot of the other teams in the conference. And when you're in the West, you have a heavy Western Conference schedule.
Right.
So it's just tough. And there are things that I like about the Kings roster. I'm not sure I could confidently pick them to make the play-in. I actually think they might be better served doing what you alluded to. Maybe they get to January or February and can find some takers for a couple of their veterans and lean a little bit harder into some of the young guys that they have, because I think that just does more for them long term.
Talking to Andy Bailey, who writes for Bleacher Report, covers the NBA. Andy, we spent a lot of time talking about Scott Perry and how much wiggle room he really had coming into this season. Obviously, they needed a point guard. They got a point guard in Dennis Schroder. But outside of that, there's some contracts that couldn't really be moved too much. And DeMar DeRozan, it's now coming out. Maybe they didn't try that hard to move DeMar DeRozan, and they like what he brings to the table. How do you think Scott Perry has done in the couple months that he has had with the Sacramento Kings and the moves that he's made?
I guess if I had to give it like a letter grade, I'd say he at least passed, maybe like a C plus B minus. If we're just basing it on this limited window that he's been in charge, there wasn't a lot of wiggle room. Like you said, DeMar DeRozan's contract specifically may not be one that there's a ton of interest for around the league. And we already knew before Zach LaVine was traded to the Kings that there wasn't a ton of interest for him when he was a Chicago Bull. So it's hard to kind of conjure that up out of thin air. And it seems like those are the two guys that would be most likely to be traded. I guess you could maybe talk about Domantas Sabonis as well. But at that point, you're talking about, I think, like a full organizational realignment. Right. Which they may not be able to, or may not be ready to push that button yet. Maybe they are in January, maybe they are in February. Maybe they realize, shoot, like this really is an uphill climb in this conference, and we don't have what it takes to compete. Let's find more playing time for Maxime Renaud. Let's find more playing time for Nick Clifford, Keon
Yeah.
Ellis. Like it's not a young core, but it's young
Mhm.
enough that I think you can give them a little bit of a runway. Like most of those guys are between 25 and 22, I think.
Yeah.
So there is some upside there, I think, to explore. It'll be easier to explore it if you can move some of those guys, but that's easier said than done. Especially in this new CBA, which it appears that the league's goal was to slow down player movement a little bit, and that has certainly happened. I mean, it's been a very dry offseason relative to some of the ones we've experienced previously. So that could be part of what Scott Perry is dealing with right now, too.
Talking to Andy Bailey, who covers the NBA for Bleacher Report. Go check out all of his articles on Bleacher Report and the Bleacher Report app. And, you bring that up, Andy, as far as the decision that the Kings could make. I talked about the Kings possibly going 13-7 before I saw their schedule, when they face the Timberwolves 3 times, the Thunder 3 times, and the Nuggets 3 times in those first 20 games. So life is going to come at them very, very fast. Speaking of player movement, Andy, what do you make of the Kings' interest in one of the more intriguing players in the NBA, Jonathan Kuminga? Clearly, they want him a little bit more than they first were trying to lead on here.
I am still a Kaminga believer.
Okay, we found one. We found one.
I feel like there are fewer of us every passing day and week. I see him as a really fascinating, and he probably does not see himself this way, but I see him as a very fascinating small ball big man. The first couple of years of his career, he had some finishes at the rim, and I'm going to throw out a name here that's kind of crazy, and it's not an apples to apples comparison, but just visually and athletically, some of his finishes looked like Amari Stoudemire to me. He's just so quick off the ground.
Yeah.
And I think he sees himself more as a wing, like a 2-3-4 type of a guy.
Right.
And maybe he is. And if he has some wing skills with the above the rim finishing ability of Amari Stoudemire, that's a pretty special player.
Right.
And that's obviously like top end potential for him. A lot of guys don't reach their top end potential. But the best possible version of Kaminga to me is a very good player. And I think he doesn't make a ton of sense with the current Kings roster. I think things could get awfully crowded offensively if him and DeRozan and Sabonis are all on the floor. Schroder, too. I think Schroder has had a couple good years as a three-point shooter in his career, but he's not the kind of guy that commands a ton of attention outside the three-point line. So I think their interest in Kaminga makes sense to me. If they were able to get him through a sign and trade or whatever mechanics it takes to do that, I would hope that would push them even further towards, okay, let's build around these guys that are all 25 and under. Let's see what we can get with that core. Because like I think I said already, I like some of those guys. Like I still believe in Keegan Murray too.
Yeah.
He's the kind of game that I like, and there's not a lot of frills to it. He's just a solid basketball player, makes good decisions, does a lot of stuff fundamentally well. Keon Ellis is a good defender. I really like Nick Clifford in this draft. So there are some interesting pieces here, and I think Kuminga would make it significantly more interesting, that young core. And I think, what is he, 21, 22 at this point?
Yeah, 22. Yeah.
So yeah, I think that would be great if they could get him. Obviously, a lot would depend on what they do after that move.
Right.
But it does make sense to me that they'd be interested.
Talking to Andy Bailey, who covers the NBA for Bleacher Report. You said a name, Andy, and I know we were talking about the younger player movement, but you said a name, so I want to ask you about him. I feel as if, and he's playing right now in Eurobasket, I don't know, Andy, and I'm not trying to be Mr. Optimism here, but I do feel like the Dennis Schroder thing is maybe a little bit underrated, maybe just a little bit. I mean, a lot of Kings fans were not thrilled. And look, I would have rather gotten a Tyus Jones if this was the direction you were going in. And let's see if some of the young guys can handle the rock, and maybe even a Malik Monk, give him another chance of being a secondary point guard, not the main point guard. But now that we're here with Dennis Schroder, I mean, the guy is no slouch, Andy.
I agree with that all the way through. I thought the reaction to his signing was kind of weird, frankly. He's not going to be an all-star. and he's in his 30s already. So there are downsides, but a lot of people were sort of painting this as this is a no-brainer, like one of the worst contracts of the offseason. And it's not like they signed him to some massive number. I guess the one part of it that I could probably nitpick a little bit easier is the trade that they made to facilitate bringing him in. Like that one was a bit of a head scratcher to trade Valanciunas for Saric, and they obviously needed it for the cap space. But if Saric gives the Kings anything this season, it'll be a bit of a shocker, frankly. He did not look like an NBA player last season. But if you can kind of move that to the side, Schroder is still a solid player. He averaged almost 20 a game for the Nets before he got traded a couple times last season. He's a heck of a competitor. I love watching him for Team Germany. A lot of these guys who play in this tournament have a different role with their national team than they do in the NBA. And you can kind of see, heck yeah, that guy's talented. He can get to the basket. He's had some good stretches in the NBA. And when the alternative is no point guard, it makes a lot of sense to get him. Now, you can also talk about, the Kings had 2 all-star point guards on their roster 3 or 4 years ago. And if you compare it to that, it's also easy to nitpick. But it doesn't really do any good to keep looking back. They had to get a point guard this offseason. They weren't going to be able to bring back Halliburton or Fox. And so I think they did about as well as they could, given this free agent market, given what they had to work with.
Talking to Andy Bailey of Bleacher Report. Andy, from one point guard to another, again, this fascination with Russell Westbrook. Does that surprise you? Do you think it's a good fit? Also, just Russell Westbrook in general. Andy, have you heard anything? There were these Westbrook fans, we call them the Brookies, and they were chasing me down because I said, hey, it doesn't seem like anybody else wants Westbrook. They told me that he turned down Eastern Conference teams because he wants to stay in the West, and now I don't know that that's true or not. Just what do you make of Westbrook, where he is right now, his fit on the Kings, and the Kings being interested in him after signing Schroder to that 3-year deal and having 12 other guards on the roster?
Yeah. There's a lot to consider with Westbrook and the Kings. I will start my response by saying that I think he was better for the Nuggets than I expected. I think he was better than a lot of people expected. This is kind of, you could probably say this of anybody, but he looked really good when he played with Jokic. Obviously, Jokic is a guy that, lifts his teammates. And so maybe we can't read too much into that. But I thought he had a solid season. And I think he still has something to give. And I'm a little surprised he's still available. I don't know anything about the accuracy of such and such team offered him a deal. I think if it's the middle, or not the middle of August, we're at the end of August at this point. I think if he had some real offers, he may be on the team right now.
Exactly.
Having said all that, I don't think he makes a lot of sense for the Kings. I have hinted a few times, if not said explicitly, they should probably be thinking more about the future than the present. And signing Westbrook obviously doesn't really fit into that philosophy. It also causes spacing problems, which we talked about earlier as well. Again, if you've got Sabonis and DeRozan on the floor, you want shooters around them. And Russell Westbrook is at a point in his career. I mean, he's never commanded a ton of respect from three-point range. And to give him some credit, he actually did shoot really well from the corners last year. But he's still a guy that's going to be left alone outside the three-point line, especially in high leverage moments. Like if the Kings did happen to make the play-in or the playoffs, teams will just leave him alone when he's outside the three-point line. So I don't think he makes a lot of sense on multiple fronts for the Kings. If they brought him in, that would signal to me that the front office thinks this veteran core can compete for a playoff spot, and I'm just not sure that's true.
Yeah, I don't think so either, Andy, but that's where we're at with it. Andy, thank you so much for joining us. One more before we let you go, because this is kind of the theme of the show today. Andy, you wake up this morning and you are Scott Perry. what's the first thing you do? It could be nothing, right? But what is the first thing you do? You wake up this morning and you were Scott Perry, GM of the Sacramento Kings.
Well, you gave me an easy out when you said it could be nothing. I think you should probably see what this roster can do over the first couple of months, because again, I just don't know if there's a lot of directions to pivot. And I would guess he's probably already done this, but I would at least, so here is what I would do. I wouldn't just leave it at nothing. I would at least canvass the league and see if there's any interest in those three veterans.
Yeah.
First DeRozan, then Levine, and probably even Sabonis, who I think is a really, really good player. He is every single year an all-star caliber guy, puts up crazy numbers, always near the league lead in rebounds and triple doubles. But I think you may have already seen the ceiling of a Kings team led by Sabonis. Maybe that's not fair to say of a guy who's 29 years old, but I think you at least have to see if there's value for him out there. And I think there would be for Sabonis. I think it'd be harder to find a great return for Levine or DeRozan. But if you can get some team to give up a bunch of picks and maybe some young talent for Sabonis, and then you say, we're really going to lean into Keegan Murray and Nate Clifford and all these guys, I think you'd have to think about doing that.
Andy Bailey, thank you so much for joining us. Writes for Bleacher Report, covers the NBA. Be sure to follow Andy on social media. Check out all his work, including the 35 wins that he gave your Sacramento Kings on BleacherReport.com and the Bleacher Report app. Andy, thank you so much. We got to do this again soon, man, and enjoy the rest of your week.
Absolutely. Always enjoy being on, Allen.
Great stuff from Andy Bailey. Great stuff from my guy, Andy. And Kyle,